As I thank Catalyst and LHMU for their help in making this happen, reminds me of political model that we teach at Wellstone Action called the Wellstone Triangle. Wellstone used to talk about 3 ingredients that were critical working together to achieve progressive change. First, it was ongoing organizing to build a permanent base of people who are pushing for change. Second is electoral politics. And third is visionary public policy so that we have something that we're working for. And so we have Catalyst on the public policy side. We have LHMU building the permanent base. And I guess we're here to talk about electoral politics. So the Wellstone Triangle is in action here today, I think. I wanted to start by just saying that in the U.S., I consider myself a progressive first and a Democrat second. And I have a pretty harsh critique of the Democratic Party over the last couple of decades, with a few exceptions, like the boss I worked for, Paul Wellstone. The Democratic Party has really practiced a very timid, very careful politics, hovering around the middle, trying to avoid any controversy, very risk-averse. And it actually has been a losing politics, even though the consultants say otherwise to our Democratic candidates. And so I think one of the lessons I come away with from the Obama campaign and other campaigns I've been involved in is actually there are times when a bold politics of conviction, can actually be a winning politics too. And so I'm interested in both having some ideals go into the political process and also winning campaigns so that those good people can hold office and wield power for the right reasons. So after seeing 2 candidates lose to George Bush in 2000 and 2004, candidates that practiced that politics of timidity, I was really honored to be able to work for Barack Obama in 2008. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things, 3 things really, that made Barack Obama a very strong candidate and a very strong campaign that he ran. The first is authenticity. The second is sound strategy and message. And the third is involving huge numbers of people in his campaign. So let me start with authenticity and what I mean by that. I mean, obviously, everyone is an authentic individual, so what makes some candidates seem real to voters and other candidates seem fake and phony? I think it really comes down to an ability to succinctly communicate who you are, what you believe, and why. In Barack Obama's case, he was new to the scene in the U.S. for the most part, and so he spent a lot of time introducing himself on his own terms. And the introduction was really his life story, which on the one hand was improbable and maybe unusual, but on the other hand was very much in the U.S. tradition. He talked about his middle-class upbringing. He talked about the values of hard work and fairness that were taught to him by his grandparents. And so when he talked about change and restoring prosperity to the middle class, it rang true to voters. His words rang true because they were in alignment with what they knew about him based on the story he told. So by revealing some about who he was and not just talking about his plans, he did that too, but he didn't start there, and talking about his values and trying to make a connection on values to voters, he came across as real. People felt like they knew him. So voters would say, yeah, I think he's trying to do the right thing. Or I think he's the genuine article, things like that, as opposed to, yeah, I really like his health care plan. That was the authentic piece. The other aspects of authenticity, he talked about change. And that was really the mantra. And after 8 years of George Bush, Yeah, that was the message of the 2008 elections. You didn't have to say much else than that. People would nod their heads after the word change. But, but a lot of politicians use the word change, right? But he was a community organizer. He was all about changing the status quo. He had dedicated his life to that. So when he talked about change, it rang true to voters. Again, that authentic connection. He also used plain language, language that everyday people use. And again, another aspect of realness that I think really helped. So that authentic style, and this isn't a point of style over substance. I think the authenticity is actually central to a strong candidacy. That authentic style turned what normally you have in supporters. Every campaign has supporters. John Kerry had supporters. But Barack Obama had passionate participants in his campaign. That was the difference, because there was this realness that drew people to him. And that authenticity actually opened the door to undecided voters and made them open to the argument about why he was the better candidate. The successful campaigns, though, combine that authenticity with very strong and sound strategy and focused message. And the Obama campaign did that as well. Very early on, in fact, at the very beginning of the campaign, Obama decided this campaign was going to be about the economy and about changing the economy and making the economy work for the middle class again. And and when we teach candidates how to run campaigns, we tell them, you can either run your own campaign or you can have it run for you by your opponent or by external events. And so by setting out a strong strategy at the beginning, he controlled the debate and he controlled his own destiny. It's a really important lesson for any campaign to figure out at the beginning how you're going to run this race based on who you are and what you want to do, and also the analysis of the race and who your opponent is, etc. So he showed extraordinary discipline on that strategy throughout the whole race. Early on, Hillary Clinton really wanted to have a debate with him about who was the more experienced person in the race. Well, he wasn't going to win that. Instead, he was arguing who's the one who's best able to bring change to Washington on the economy. That was a debate he was going to win. Sarah Palin, when she became the vice presidential pick, everyone wanted Barack Obama to take her on and list all the reasons, and there were a lot of them, why she wasn't qualified to be a vice presidential candidate. He simply welcomed her to the race and went back to his message, because ultimately the decision was made that this race is going to be about my message versus John McCain's, and that was smart. It would have been very easy to be dragged off that, and he didn't take the bait. In the fall, there was a lot of discussion about the Iraq War, and while the Iraq War was extraordinarily unpopular in America in the 2008 elections, and Barack Obama was on the right side of that issue in terms of winding it down and getting our troops out, there was actually there was some concern about whether he was really up for the job of commander-in-chief. So he chose not to lead on the issue of the Iraq War. He didn't avoid talking about that. He did when he needed to, but that wasn't what he led with, even though if you look at the polling numbers, you would suggest that that was the top issue on voters' minds. But it wasn't necessarily one he was going to win on. And that strategic focus really paid off because around mid-September, the issue of the economy came roaring back into focus in a dramatic way with the collapse of the U.S. stock market. And so that really paid off, and it was all about the economy for the end, and John McCain got no traction at all.